when you're ready. And
Okay, I think we're all.
All right. And Elaine, if you want to introduce yourself, we can start with that.
okay. Hey, everyone. My name is Elaine. I am a wheelchair dancer and the marketing coordinator for Wheelchair Dancers organization based down in San Diego. And I'm really happy to be here tonight. Alyssa, thank you for the invitation. And I hope that I can answer any questions. I really want this to be a conversation versus me just looking into the camera and telling you things. So feel free to jump in with any questions and I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, got one already. Oh, and Alicia, you're welcome. I'm happy to be with everyone tonight. Thank you so much.
All right. We have our questions, some questions we prepared already if we want to start with those. And if anyone else
Cool.
has anything, feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. So first, just like when did you start wheelchair dancing? Like in general, when did you first learn it or start trying it out?
I started in July of 2021. I got injured in 2018, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I was injured in 2018, and by the time 2021 came around, I'd been participating in hand cycling and other adaptive sports, but I also used to dance before my injury, and I was looking for some form of adaptive dance, specifically wheelchair dance. So I Googled wheelchair dancing and WDO came up in the search results. I was living up in Orange County at the time, so I hopped in the car and drove like an hour and a half south and went to one of their events and then began taking classes.
That's awesome. Um, and so that's how you first became involved with WDO. When did you decide to
Yeah.
like join the board or the like become the marketing director, and how did that process go?
That was shortly after I joined, and I was speaking with the founder of the organization, Beverly Wording, and they were kind of in a transition period. They were just coming back to in-person instruction after having been virtual for pretty close to a year. And they were looking for some marketing assistance, and that's primarily what I do. I do social media marketing, digital marketing, all of that. So she just suggested I apply for the position. So I did the usual thing of drawing up a proposal, the budget, everything else, and submitted it to the board, and they approved it. So by January of 2022, I was taking care of their marketing.
Um, that's really cool. What was I gonna say? You mentioned you danced before. Do you have a favorite style of dance then versus now? Is it the same or any changes?
Oh God, that's a really hard question because prior to my accident, I studied all forms of dance. Of course, the three most popular, tap, ballet, and jazz, followed by hip hop, world dance, ballroom. And so as a standing dancer, I loved all dance forms. They were great. I could not learn enough. And I didn't start until I was an adult. So I took classes at the local community college where it was super cheap and I was learning with other adults, which was great. But when I became a wheelchair dancer, I started out with ballroom because that was the first class that was offered. And then I branched out into Bollywood, hip hop, and I even tried samba, which was a little hard. So I'd have to say my favorite dance form in wheelchair is hip hop.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
And I
it's a
remember
lot of
your
fun.
performance. You had a hip hop number that was I really enjoyed.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody. And I was dancing with two of our strongest dancers that we have. They're both instructors. And I was definitely nervous that day. I mean, if I had a heart monitor on when I was waiting in the wings, I probably was rocking out at like 160 beats a minute or something. I was just terrified. But I survived and I really enjoyed performing it.
Yeah, that's great. I was gonna say. Do you often hear any misconceptions about wheelchair dancing? Do you come across people who are
Yes.
misinformed?
Yes. I've heard quite a few, and they are all based in ableism, and they're also based in on outdated concepts of disability and active disabled people. I heard when I told somebody I was a wheelchair dancer, they thought that I had somebody push me around, in the dance formation. I said, no, I am self-propelled. The only thing that's injured is my leg. That's it. Um, and I heard someone else say that they didn't want to do it because it was for old people. It's primarily for people of all ages. If you go onto social media, you'll find little kids doing it now because, again, that's the power of social media. They look at influencers like Chelsea Hill, Kaylee Bays, and they're out there dancing, and it's really inspiring kids to do it. But that was one of the biggest misconceptions I heard, that it was for older people. I think people had a picture of wheelchair dancers as being in, like, unfortunately, a long-term care facility and their big bulky wheelchairs and dancing. And that's just not how it is. It's primarily active wheelchair users. We do have some power chair users who have gone through classes with us, and they've done a great job with the choreography and everything else. It's just allowing more room because of the extra bulk of the power chair. Um, what other misconceptions have I heard? Um, we've had some people come to our classes, and I'm going to have to tiptoe around this, but I think it's really important to unpack it a little bit, especially since so many of you are going to be working in the rehabilitation space with people of all abilities, both cognitively and physically. We've had groups of people come to our classes, perfectly well-meaning, but they also thought we were also had intellectual disabilities. So it affected how they treated us. And so finally, I'm pretty outspoken. I talked to one of the people and said, you know, we just have physical disabilities. So it's okay to address us like adults. We are primarily adults in this class. It's important that you address us as such. If somebody has a communication difficulty or a communication disorder, they will be sure and tell you. So that was kind of a sticky point, but it's really important to have the hard conversations in class, because then people will leave class with a different perception than when they went in. And that's super important right now, especially with on one side, you do have a lot of ableist messaging. And on the flip side, you do have a lot of people out there on social media utilizing wheelchair dancing in all forms, ballet, hip hop, dance fitness, ballroom especially. It's called para dance sport. So I think in the moment, it's really important to address those situations and unpack them right there before they have a chance to get worse, or before the person has a chance to develop even more misconceptions or incorrect assumptions about us.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That was great
Sure.
and very definitely helpful to know. Building off of that, is there anything else that you wish people would know about wheelchair dancing? Like maybe beyond some of the misconceptions, just anything else?
I wish that they knew we work as hard, if not harder, than standing dancers. From a choreography perspective, standing dancers have the use of their lower body, to act sometimes as a counterweight or to pivot, or running movements, turns, pirouettes, all of that. Wheelchair dancers, we primarily use our bodies from the waist up. So we use the upper body. So we don't have the option of using our feet to keep time, or to, especially in hip hop. So we use primarily our upper bodies and a lot of facial expression. It is hard. It is really hard. My first class, I thought, oh, I have a dance background. This is no problem. No, it was really difficult to make the adjustment and to translate the movement. A standing dancer may move their hips when they dance as part of the choreography. So we take that movement and we translate it to our shoulders if we can, for the dancers who have that mobility in their shoulders, they can. Some dancers don't, so they'll use their head or some kind of movement to kind of translate the original movement. It's really difficult, and as an art form, it's some aspects of it are easy to learn, but it's very difficult to master. So
Yeah, it definitely seems like you'd have to, especially since you were a dancer before, kind of relearn a lot of stuff to figure out. I'm sure much different space
I'm
of.
not ashamed to say that I am essentially still a beginner. There's a lot for me to learn. And each time I take a class, I come away with something new. And I'm sure that's going to go on for a long, long time.
And I think that's the beauty of it. You get to continue learning and trying out more stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel like wheelchair dancing has helped you develop any skills that you might not have gotten otherwise?
This is a tough one because I was injured, as an adult fairly late in life, so to speak. So I think what I learned was specific to the art of wheelchair dancing. Again,
Mhm.
how to translate movement, obviously how to maneuver the chair without hurting myself because it involves a lot of work from the shoulders and from the core. I have full use of my core, so I have to make it a point to activate my core so as not to overload the shoulders. So definitely from a learning perspective, that's what I've had to learn and really focus on was translating the movement and then making sure that I keep that core engaged so I don't overload my shoulders and be careful with my wrists. Before every class, I do a very thorough warm up. I use dynamic warm up. I don't do any static stretches or anything like that because my body's still cold. I make sure to warm up the wrists, the elbows, the shoulders, the core, even my head and neck. So that's been a learning curve. In a conventional dance class, of course, I'd come in and warm up like they want you to do, but it was just something I took for granted after a while, and it just became, routine. With wheelchair dancing, I've learned that I've really had to put a lot more thought into it if I want to have a good, thorough warm up before instruction starts. Definitely a steep learning curve.
Right, great. Thank you for sharing. I also know that you've touched on this a bit already when we were talking about what you wish more people know, but do you want to expand more on any challenges of wheelchair dancing and other like how it's more advantageous compared to other forms of dance?
Well, the challenges that we experience beyond the physical challenges that all of us in the group have been challenges of perception. Prior to my coming on board, they had a form on their website, volunteer to dance with us. And I thought, you know, people don't post stuff looking for volunteers at Tango del Rey to dance with everybody, right? So that perception put us as disabled people as passive recipients of someone else's volunteer effort, that we were somebody to kind of feel sorry for. We were the pitiful kids in the corner. Nobody wanted to dance with us, but hey, maybe someone would volunteer. So one of my jobs as the marketing director was to kind of change that messaging. I got rid of that form really fast. That was the first thing I nuked off that website because it's important for our standing students and our seated students to be on equal ground as dancers and not have one be the volunteer with the other being the recipient of the passive recipient of the volunteer's time. So that's one thing I've really worked with is addressing those challenges of perception and unpacking them head on. The advantages of wheelchair dancing, I think, I can't speak for all of us. It's first of all, it's given us access to an activity that for the longest time was only available to standing people. and we are able to participate on an even playing field. Obviously, there's the social component of it. There's a group of people who've been with the organization since it started back in 2008. It's been a huge social outlet for them. It's been a performance outlet prior to the pandemic. The group was performing at health fairs, fundraisers, and everything else. So it's all around, it's just been an excellent outlet for people on many, many levels. And that's one of the advantages of it.
Yeah, I definitely saw while I was there for the fundraiser that it seemed like a really well-knit community that was very supportive of each other, and it seemed really great. I
Yeah.
also wanted to ask, are there any competitions for wheelchair dancing? Because I know that like able-bodied dancing has lots of different competitions and things like that.
Yeah, we have dance moms to thank for that. In wheelchair dancing right now, it's limited to ballroom, and that is referred to as para dance sport. It is very expensive. We have our dance director competes at the Beach Bash every year. That's one of the largest events on the ballroom dance calendar. So while there are competitions, they're not financially accessible to everyone. Unfortunately, there's
Mhm,
being some work done to address that, but I would say they're not readily accessible financially for so many of us.
mhm. So that's definitely somewhere that could hopefully be improved in the future of opening that up to both be more
Yes,
financially open and to more types of dance.
exactly.
Mhm. Um, and do you have a favorite memory from any of your wheelchair dance classes or performances?
Oh gosh, I haven't been doing it that long, but I would have to say so far, my first showcase performance last year, I did a Viennese waltz with one of the instructors. Um, it was funny because I thought, oh, the music's a little too young, and it was to A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes. And it was very personal because I used to be a skater as well. And obviously, the injury changed that. And so I kind of switched it up and wanted to become a wheelchair dancer. So that piece kind of spoke to it. All I remember is the audience being so receptive to the piece. And that was my first performance as a wheelchair dancer. So that's a memory that definitely stands out.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm sure it was a whole mixture of emotions,
Oh
especially
yeah.
leading up to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, in what ways have you seen wheelchair dance impact people's lives, either your own or others, you know?
Well, I would say during my time in the group, I've seen people, expand their social circle. I've seen them learn a new physical skill that maybe they got messaging that they could never learn, but they went ahead and learned it. I've seen people who've never performed before go out and perform for the first time and do really well. I've seen people make physical improvements, particularly in the areas of strength and also coordination. And our classes take place year round. So somebody may come in the summertime and may have some issues with coordination or strength. And by the time winter rolls around, there have been some improvements in those areas, which is really important. That's a big piece of our work, is to give people an outlet for building strength, for improving coordination and endurance as well. Because once we start dancing, it does take a lot of endurance.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing. That's all the questions I have that we have prepared. If anyone else has anything and you want to jump in, please do. Or Elaine, if you want to just share more about any other things you have that we haven't asked about.
Oh gosh. Oh, I was going to mention that our group is comprised of people with different levels of disability. We have some people who are full-time wheelchair users, usually due to conditions like cerebral palsy, spina bifida. neuromuscular disorders. And then there's a subgroup of wheelchair users that are ambulatory wheelchair users. And I fall into that category. So while I'm able to walk short distances without a mobility aid, if I want to dance or be out in the community, like, go to an event or a shopping area, I use my chair. We have people with connective tissue disorders such as Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, hypermobility syndrome, and also neuromuscular disorders like muscular dystrophy. So we have a broad spectrum of disability within our group. And I remember we had some new standing dancers in our class, and I was in my wheelchair and I crossed my legs. The instructor was talking, and I needed to get more comfortable. So I just, flung one leg over the other, and she's like, "Oh my God, you moved your leg." And I said, "Yeah, some of us can." So that's part of our work, is welcoming people of all spectrums and all levels of physical disability, be it a full-time wheelchair user or an ambulatory user like myself or somebody in between. We've had people come in and dance with crutches before, or maybe they're able to walk, but they use a chair to dance. Our dance director has arthritis, and so when she dances or has to walk any more than a short distance, she uses her chair, but she's otherwise ambulatory, as am I. So I feel it's always important that people know that we welcome a full spectrum of physical disability. It's not just limited to spinal cord injury. It's not just limited to cerebral palsy, and it's not just limited to spina bifida. We welcome a full spectrum.
That's great. Another question. I know a lot of people in our organization are like heading towards maybe careers in rehabilitation. I just was wondering if you feel like wheelchair dancing connects to any rehab you may have gone through after your injury, either or anything.
I did not have the good fortune of going through any kind of rehab after my injury aside from regular PT. Um, I had to find out about wheelchair dancing on my own. Yay, Google. And I think, though, it would be an important part of any rehabilitation program, be it inpatient or outpatient. It just gives the clients another avenue to pursue physical activity. And that's so important to our well-being. And to have that be a part of the rehab setting would be amazing, because once they leave the rehab setting, they'll have yet another activity that they can pursue if they want to. I know a lot of people that I met in the disability community, like through Triumph Foundation and things like that, prior to becoming disabled, and they continue to be athletes afterward. Not necessarily going into dance, but I think it would be an important part of the rehab setting to offer wheelchair dance, not necessarily ballroom with partners. That can be difficult for a lot of people, but just something simple like learning, a short hip hop routine or something like that. It'd be good for people's well-being, and again, giving them more options for when they are eventually released from the rehab setting.
Yeah, I think that would be a great way to integrate different types of physical activity and people's interests and all of that to also help motivate them as well if they're interested.
Yeah.
I have a quick.
Do you have
any? So in your time at WDO San Diego, how have you kind of seen the program grow, and is there something you really hope to see in the near future?
Right now, the program is in a period of transition. Our enrollment has dropped a bit since reopening post lockdown. What I really hope to see in the future, and what I really hope would help the program, and I'm kind of pushing in this direction, is to have a performance group that goes out into the community and performs at events, because one way to grow a program is to show people what it's like. I could do all the social posts in the world until I fall over, and I've done that. But I think, You know, when you look at a traditional standing dance program and you go to like a community event, like a fair or a health fair, 9 times out of 10, you're going to see dancers from the local studio performing. That's one way to give them performance experience, and it also grows their program because people are like, oh, hey, I want to take classes there. I want to take ballet there or jazz or hip hop or whatever. So I'd really like to see us expand into that arena as well as starting our own paradance program for dancers that are more focused on pursuing competitive ballroom dance. So those are 2 areas I'd really like to see us grow in addition to offering classes. If um, facilitate our growth, because more serious dancers will know that they have an outlet. They could go ahead and continue to work to improve and have like a competitive or performing outlet. And dancers that want to stay more recreational in the classroom also have that available to them, and they don't necessarily need to perform unless they want to.
Cool. If you guys start going out in the community as like adaptive sports, we'd love to come out and support. So
Oh, that would be great. We'd love to have you. For sure, we would love to have you. And yes, I will take you up on that.
awesome.
Does anybody have any questions for me specifically or about disability in general? I'm a sociologist by training, so I tend to look at things through that lens as well as through an intersectional lens. I think that's really important when looking at disability. I could ramble on about my injury or whatever, but I really want this to be more of a dialogue than anything else. So if anybody has any questions, please drop them in the chat or jump into the discussion. Don't be shy. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Anybody? Bueller? Bueller? Yay!
I just wanted to say thank you so much. I don't really have any questions per se, but I really have enjoyed listening to you speak. So thank you.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Anybody
I also
else?
wanted to say thank you for speaking, and I enjoyed hearing your story.
Oh,
And
thank you, Adam. Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Any questions? Oh, let's see. How do you show sadness with wheelchair dancing? What a great question. Again, we just we primarily use our upper bodies, and we use this a lot because, again, we don't have our typically in traditional dance. I'm sure you've seen some of the competition dancers when they're doing a contemporary piece. It's very sad. They'll use like a side tilt or they'll do like a roll or something like that. We don't have that. So when I was working on a piece last year, a contemporary piece, and again, the way that it was presented to me, the body's very closed in and closed off. You know, the face is down or what have you. And again, the shoulders are in, the whole body is in. And that's one way of expressing sadness. Again, it could be just us being stationary through our face. It could be using the whole upper body. There's such a spectrum as to how sadness can be interpreted in wheelchair dancing. And that comes primarily from the dancers themselves as well as a particular choreographer. So that was a great question, Brian. Thank you. That was awesome. Anybody else?
Can you tell us a little bit about your injury and maybe your experience kind of just having to like view the world from a different perspective?
I was injured in 2018 and I was a competitive skater. Again, I started as an adult. I couldn't do any of this stuff as a kid, so I just went nuts as an adult with dance and skating, blah, all that. So anyway, it was a blunt force impact from another skater going at an excessive speed, and he hit me just right And all I remember is laying on the floor and I'm not able to feel my leg. And making my way through the healthcare system was just kind of a nightmare. It took me 2 weeks to get an x-ray referral, another month to get into physical therapy. And with this type of injury, with localized nerve damage and destroyed blood vessels and everything else, it was crucial that I get into a physical therapy setting early on. So I did lose use of my leg through that accident. Um, at the time, I just thought it was temporary, like no big deal. And then as time went on, I realized that it wasn't, that what I have is what I have. And, you know, within the skating community, there's a lot of ableism. So I had to deal with a lot of unsolicited advice. I had to deal with friends kind of drifting away. Because again, when you're an athlete and you see somebody who's injured, most people get really uncomfortable because they realize, oh my God, that could happen to me. Oh no, I don't want to think about it. So I'll just, take off. It caused disagreements, not necessarily disagreements, but there were a lot of hard conversations that I had to have with people, like, and realizing that skating was no longer going to be a part of my life. I had just started it and I was actually getting ready to start the first lesson of the new season when the accident happened. So it was a huge loss for me. I lost income. It was very difficult for me to go to work. I was in constant pain. I developed complex regional pain syndrome, which is a complication of either surgery or injury or like an automobile accident. It's extremely painful. My leg was discolored. It was colder than the other one. It was very painful. It was very difficult for me to work. I was in a full knee brace and crutches, but I had no choice. And it made things really awkward at work because people felt put out if I asked them, hey, would you mind carrying this box over to my desk? I really appreciate it. Thank you. You know, you could do it on your own time. Dealing with changes in friendships. The one thing that got me through, and there's a lot of depression that goes with an injury, especially when you realize that this is going to be a permanent situation. As rehab professionals, I mean, I know my PT was the reason why I got out of bed every morning. You know, she was great about keeping me motivated, but also keeping me realistic too. And she was the one who said, you really have to start looking into different ways of doing the things that you love. You know, why don't you try hand cycling? Why don't you try wheelchair dance? And I would have to say that she and her assistants were the ones that got me through some really serious depression. And I think in the PT and rehab setting, that's very common when somebody's injured, because there are so many losses. I know I experienced loss of friends, loss of income, loss of mobility, loss of independence. Early on, I had to have my neighbor come over and put my laundry in the laundry room and do my laundry for me, get my groceries for me. Um, I had someone tell me when about the first month I was injured, your injury is all you talk about. Don't let it define you. And I said, hey, it defines how I get on and off the toilet. So yes, it does define me. It defines how I move around the house. It defines how I get in and out of the shower. So, um, and through working with my PT, we were trying to figure out why there were so many complications with this particular injury, and come to find out that I'm hypermobile. So when you expose a hypermobile joint to a blunt force impact, that joint will basically blow up. I mean, all the soft tissue, connective tissue, and everything is already real flimsy. So it's already vulnerable. And then to have like a blunt force impact where the other person's going like 30, 40 miles an hour, it basically destroys everything within the affected limb in this case, my leg. So that was like an extra layer that we hadn't really thought about before until she gave me the Baton test, which measures degrees of hypermobility in a person. The scale, I think, is from 1 to 6. I was a 4 out of 6 in the areas tested. So that also impacted my healing time. It impacts me to this day. And I'm still, even 5 years later, I'm still adjusting, you know. I would love to be able to go on a hike. I would love to be able to just get out and walk for miles. I've walked marathons before I got injured. So it is an ongoing dynamic adjustment, just like my disability is dynamic. Some days I'm in a ton of pain and can't really accomplish much, and I don't walk much. Other days I'm able to walk comfortably with no problem. Whoops, there goes my speaker. Sorry about that. Other days I'm able to walk comfortably with no problem. So it's just respecting the dynamic nature of disability. It's not static or fixed. And let me see, we have a couple comments towards Oh, this is great. Someone wrote, wow, I'm so sorry to hear that you had to experience that. I have my feelings towards our healthcare system. I see how it has its purpose, but I also see how its shortcomings have experienced it myself. I'm grateful that you are finding your way. And Alicia, thank you so much. Yes, I'm still finding my way. And if it were not for my PTs, to be real honest, I probably wouldn't be here because of the sense of loss that I felt after my injury. And the grief is ongoing. It's not that I'm a sad sack sitting at home in my sweats and all of that, but in the background, there's always this grieving process that I go through. And then Caitlin wrote, you mentioned having a hard time, having hard conversations and changes in relationships. Do you speak with the person who hit you during the skate accident, or were they able to help you in any way since it was caused by them? I feel like if I were involved, I would feel an obligation to assist the person that I hurt and would want to help in any way possible because of the huge change in your life. I wish. The hard part was for me is I had a lot of friends at that rink. And so about a month after I was injured, I went back to visit people. And that same person who hit me was there. He was allowed to continue to skate. But the good news is I was able to ream him out. So that was awesome because I was still there in like a hip to ankle brace and crutches and still in a lot of pain. And he comes up to me, goes, oh, so your leg still hurts, huh? And that was it. I was off and running. I'm all, dude, you did this because you were not paying attention, because you wanted to go fast, because you weren't paying attention around you. This is the end result of what happened. This is what you did. And this is permanent. So I hope you sleep well tonight. You know, I mean, seriously, I let him have it. And the people around me were either like, damn, or they're like, oh, she's crazy, I'm not going to talk to her anymore. It was a very divided reaction, but it was cathartic to tell him that, because up until that point, he made no effort to come forward. He left right after the accident. He made no effort to contact me and say, hey, I know you're probably dealing with some serious medical bills. I'm still paying off the medical debt, by the way, because at the time of the accident, I had a high deductible insurance plan. And so I paid for everything out of pocket. The physical therapy, which was like $50 a visit, the aquatic therapy, my brace. Fortunately, one of my skating friends and his wife pooled their resources to get me a proper brace. Up until that time, I just had some piece of junk that was not effective in providing proper support and facilitating healing. So I'm still paying off the medical debt from that accident. And I'm still living with like the financial ramifications of it. But no, he made no effort to come forward to address it. The rink made no effort to come forward because, again, you skate at your own risk. But the guy was essentially out of control, and other skaters had come up to me afterward and said, you know, I'm scared with him on the floor too. So no, he made no effort to come forward. He made no effort to make it right. And karma? I don't know. I have my moments still, but yeah. Yeah. Again, everything is dynamic and ongoing and it changes. Let's see. Have you thought about creating a GoFundMe? Yes, I have. But that's as far as it's gone. It's very hard to ask for help. So I've thought about it. Yeah, I've thought about it. I've had a lot of financial losses tied to the accident, so I am still getting back on my feet figuratively anyway. I've thought about it, but it's hard to like make that leap and go, here it is, because everybody's broke. I mean, everybody is just like broke. Let's see what else. A comment, his behavior is so surprising to me. I'm so sorry to hear he wasn't more remorseful and didn't do more to help. He definitely should be paying. Yeah, yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. It's difficult when there is a situation like that. It's similar to a hit and run in a vehicle, really. That's kind of what happened. And yeah, it, yeah. So let's see. Any other comments, questions?
I
They've
just
all been really good so far. Oh,
thank you
yeah, go
for
ahead.
sharing with us. I'm so sorry to hear all that happen. But like, that's amazing how strong you are
Thank you.
dealing with that. And you did this amazing thing, and you're like an amazing wheelchair dancer. Me and Alyssa went to your showcase. So
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to be here and to give like the full perspective because when people come into the rehab setting, yes, they bring their injury, but they also bring the context of the injury with them, and that will impact their rehab outcomes. And I think having supportive staff, in my case, it was the PT assistant and the PT aide, is vital to good outcomes. And for those of you who will be entering the rehab space as practitioners or OTAs or OTs or rehabilitation counselors and therapists and things like that, my unsolicited advice is to look at the whole person and to really look at the context of the injury. Be it acquired from illness such as stroke or anything like that, or neuromuscular disease, onset neuromuscular disease, or an accident like I went through. That context, I was really grateful for my physical therapist. The first session she spent with me, yes, she did the assessment, and yes, it hurt like hell, and yes, I cried. But she also spent time with me talking about exactly what happened, because that was going to inform how she cared for me. Obviously, with an accident, there is a component of, PTSD. I remember being really jumpy for about a year or two afterward. I didn't want anybody coming near me quickly, especially now because the reflexes in this leg are very limited. I can't turn and pivot like I, used to be able to. But she really took time with me and asking, how it happened. How did the people around you respond? Have you experienced changes in your relationships? Is there anybody you can figuratively and literally lean on for support? What is your support network like? And that was a huge component in her intake session with me. And it really informed how she and her assistant worked with me. And it was great because when I would show up and I was having a bad day emotionally, again, that depression is just absolutely brutal, would not wish it on anybody. Yeah, they knew when I would come in the door what kind of day I was having. And yes, we would work hard, but they would just approach it a little bit differently depending on how I was doing. And they always made it a point to look at me and say, "Hey, Elaine, how are you doing today?" And they would take the time to listen. And to me, that's So valuable. Let's see, another question, Jordan. How was a transition from skating to dancing? Definitely challenging, but I knew from skating to have like the upright posture, and in skating it's a much smaller audience, so make it a point to connect personally with the audience, not be afraid to look at them. So the transition was easy from that perspective, from use of the upper body, use of the arms, use of the face. With the legs, it was a different story. So, but I felt like I made the transition fairly smoothly. There's still a lot for me to learn, but I'm definitely able to draw on skating, my skating experience, even to this day as a wheelchair dancer. So if you do encounter somebody that was like a skater or dancer prior to injury, don't be afraid to draw on that with them, because that helps them stay connected with what they absolutely loved. Now, if it depresses them, obviously don't do it. But my PT was really good about saying, okay, we're going to do a balance exercise. And I'm sure this is really similar to when you were doing compulsory figures, and it's like something in my brain went, oh yeah, okay, context, and that muscle memory kicked in. So yeah, skating and wheelchair dance are actually pretty close. Ideally, I envision a collaboration between a wheelchair dancer and a skater. So I'm hoping someday to be able to collab with a skater and create a piece around that. I have an expression that's on my Instagram. It said, "Old skaters don't die, we just change the size of our wheels." So, so yeah. And let's see. Any other questions, comments?
I was curious. I know you mentioned that you did some aquatic therapy. Have you ever considered doing any other adaptive sports, either like swimming or in the water or elsewhere besides dancing?
I love the water. I am able to participate in aquatic fitness classes because of the support of the water. If I'm in chest high water, it's awesome because I can walk with somewhat of a normal gait. I could do about 90% of the exercises in the aquatic fitness class, and it's great. I want to try swimming, but when I go to do a flutter kick, the left leg just kind of like hangs there, and my right leg's kicking away, and I'm kind of going in like a little circle because this leg is just doing, you know, this again, the localized nerve damage, the responses are not there. I would love to try adaptive swimming. I think the water is such a comfort to me, and it definitely helps relieve pain. If I'm having a lot of pain on a given day, I just get in the water and it reduces pain so much. And to experience the full mobility in the water, my favorite thing is to put on a flotation belt, go into the deep end and just run like I used to. And it's just awesome. It's so awesome. I know there's a lot of there's a whole disability pride movement out there, which I believe very much in and I support. And over time, I've grown to become a part of it, but there's also a part of me that just wants to experience what it was like before I was injured. And being in the water allows me to do that.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's great to hear. Any other questions?
And
Just a little
let's
comment.
see.
Thank you for sharing the whole how important focusing on your mental health in physical therapy is too, and what your physical therapist did to help you through that process. I think as students who are probably going into the field of healthcare, and that's really important for us to just be aware of and focus on the inclusivity of it all and interdisciplinariness of everything. So thank you. That's super valuable.
Oh, you're welcome. You are so welcome. And it is very, very important to look at the whole person. I know our healthcare system with its 15-minute appointments and all of that. It's very difficult to do, but if you could just grab a couple minutes to find out how your client is doing on that day and just kind of hold space for them, it makes a world of difference. It did for me. It really did.
Okay, if we don't have any other
Any other
questions,
questions? Yeah, no other
all right.
questions in
Well,
the
if anyone
comments
has, oh,
section. Oh, let's see. Do you have any words of wisdom? Oh my God. Um, gosh, I would just say, as practitioners, meet your clients where they're at in the very beginning. If they're having a bad day and they're really depressed, hold space for them. On the flip side, if they're having a really good day, be sure and celebrate that with them, because it's the little tiny wins that make the PT and rehab process bearable. The process I went through was extremely painful. It involved a physical therapist taking my leg and bending it when it did not want to bend because of all the scar tissue and damage and everything else. I was not a candidate for surgery because of the nature of the injury. Surgery would have probably wouldn't have held. So I guess I would just say meet your clients where they're at in the moment, and don't be afraid to be in the moment with them. Yeah. You're welcome. Okay, let's see. Any other questions or comments? Nope.
if not, then I just want to say thank you so much for sharing so much information with us. It's really been so helpful, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us.
Well, I appreciate the invitation again, and feel free to reach out via email. Alyssa, you have my email, so if anybody has any questions that maybe they didn't think of, but they would still like to have a conversation or some dialogue, they're more than welcome to reach me at, let's see, oh gosh, I just drew a total blank on the email. Alyssa, you have my WDO email, and you have my permission to give it to any of the students here who have any questions or any comments beyond tonight's conversation.
Okay, perfect. We can send it out in our group me, which is our little like group chat, so we can send it there if anyone has questions.
Cool.
Well, then thank you everyone for joining, and thank you again, Elaine. We really appreciated it.
You're more than welcome. This has been a lot of fun. And again, I really appreciate the invitation, and I hope our paths cross again soon. So follow us on our social media channels on Facebook, Wheelchair Dancers Organization, as well as our Instagram page, and to stay on top of our latest events. And again, thank you so much. And you guys have a great evening and good luck with your studies. Go out there and do good things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Have a
great
great night too.
Thank you. All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.